Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we dig into the sources you send our way, pull out the key stuff, save you some time, but keep you in the loop. And today, wow, we have quite a story. It's about Panfilo de Narvaez's expedition to Florida. It's epic, often really harrowing, and we're looking at what happened to some survivors.
Yeah, and we're mainly drawing from Andrés Reséndez's book, A Land So Strange, The Epic Journey of Cabeza de Vaca. It's a fantastic source for this.
Right, and it's not the standard conquistador story, is it?
No, not at all. That's what makes it so compelling. You get this really personal view, first-hand accounts mixed with historical digging. It gives you a different angle on those early European encounters in North America.
Okay, let's get into it. It starts with Diego Velázquez, right? The governor of Cuba. Rich guy, ambitious.
Very ambitious. He was set on conquering new lands, especially Yucatan. He already funded expeditions like Grijalva's. Gold was definitely on his mind.
A powerful motivator, for sure.
And, his goals sort of shifted. It wasn't just about exploring anymore. He really wanted to cement his power there.
Ah, okay.
Which is why he teamed up with Panfilo de Narvaez for this much bigger expedition. It wasn't just about land. Part of the plan was to deal with Hernán Cortés.
Cortés, the one who went to Mexico.
Exactly. Velázquez saw Cortés as basically an outlaw, operating without permission. So Narvaez was supposed to potentially bring him back, maybe even by force. It shows you the politics, the rivalries among the Spaniards themselves.
Gunthroat stuff. And Narvaez, he wasn't new to power games, was he? He spent time in Spain at court.
3 years. And it sounds like hard work, honestly.
Yep.
Constantly trying to get royal backing.
Oh, that's like a vacation, more like lobbying.
Totally. You have to imagine the pressure, right?
Yeah.
How you looked, how you talked, everything judged. And Narvaez, he knew how to play the game. He gave a load of Cuban gold to King Ferdinand.
Can't hurt.
Definitely helped. Plus, he buddied up with powerful people like Bishop Fonseca, who control a lot of the New World business. It was all about connections and influence.
And the timing here is wild. Spain's in flux, King Ferdinand dies, his grandson Charles takes over, and Charles is Flemish-born, kind of an outsider to some Spaniards.
Right. And in the middle of all this, Narvaez finally sails back to Cuba, only to find Cortés has already left for Mexico.
That timing.
And Velázquez. He really didn't grasp how dangerous Cortés was. Not at first. He thought, he's got this long appointment in Yucatan. He can't challenge me without the king's say-so. He even kept sending him supplies.
Thinking Cortés would just be his man on the ground.
Yeah, completely misread Cortés's ambition. Big time.
Meanwhile, over in Mexico, Moctezuma's trying to handle the Spanish arrival by giving them gifts, hoping they'll just go away.
Which, of course, just made the Spanish want more gold. Classic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Predictable, sadly.
And into this mess steps Narvaez, just full of confidence. Tells Velázquez, don't worry, I'll beat Cortés, bring him back like a naughty son.
Uh-oh. Famous last words.
Pretty much. That overconfidence, as the book points out, becomes a real theme, and it costs them dearly.
And trouble hits almost immediately, even before they get to Mexico properly. Near Veracruz, a massive storm, a norther.
Yeah, brutal one. Sinks one ship, damages 6 others, 40 men lost, just gone.
What a start. Grim.
It really sets the tone, doesn't it? Hardship from day one. And remember, while Narvaez was supposed to rein in Cortés, his actual royal permission, his charter, was for Florida.
Ah, right. Florida was the official target, and Seville was the launch pad for all this.
Seville was the place. The only authorized port for New World trade and expeditions back then. Imagine the chaos buzzing, full of adventurers, everyone chasing rumors of gold.
Must have been intense. And getting these trips ready was tough. Shortages and all that.
Oh, yeah. Massive undertakings. Short on everything, even flour sometimes.
Ugh.
And finding good pilots. That was crucial and really difficult.
I bet. Especially for somewhere like Florida, not as well known, maybe.
Exactly. The Crown tried to keep a pool of pilots, but there just weren't enough. Narvaez struggled. He eventually hired this guy, Miruelo, a pilot whose, let's just say, navigation skills would cause huge problems later, led them way off course.
We'll get to that. But the crew itself wasn't just soldiers, right? It was a mix.
A real mix. Spaniards, Portuguese, Greeks,
Uh-huh.
men, women, all Catholic, officially. And also enslaved people, like Estebanico. The book calls him a black Arab from North Africa.
Estebanico, his story becomes incredible later, doesn't it?
Absolutely vital. And his background's interesting. North Africa, coastal region, maybe more used to different cultures, trade. He was apparently outgoing, good with languages, skills that become super important.
And then there's Cabeza de Vaca, the main voice in the book, royal treasurer.
Right, noble family, military experience, and being treasurer meant his loyalty was supposed to be directly to the king, not necessarily to Narvaez.
Potential conflict there.
Definitely. As the king's man, he could question Narvaez. And he does. That tension builds.
Okay, so they cross the Atlantic. Sounds rough. Crammed ships, weeks at sea. They stop in Hispaniola, Santo Domingo today.
They'd see the gold mining, the sugar plantations, maybe get a taste of hurricane season 2. Always a risk in the Caribbean.
And then things get worse sailing towards Cuba.
Yeah, they get stuck. 15 days stuck in these shallow, dangerous waters, the Canario Shoals. And then comes the big mistake.
Miuelo, the pilot.
Makes a huge navigational error. Instead of hitting the Rio de las Palmas where they were supposed to go, they land hundreds of miles away in Tampa Bay, Florida.
900 miles off course, is that right?
Something like that. Just an immense blunder. And that one mistake changes everything.
And their first contact with the locals in Tampa Bay, not good.
Not good at all. They find these crates with dead Europeans inside, probably from an earlier shipwreck. And the reaction from the friar, Juan Suarez, he burns the crates, calls it devil worship.
Setting a bad tone from the start.
A really destructive one, yeah.
So, wrong place, tension's high, and Narvaez decides to split the group.
He does. Sends a land party marching north to find the Rio de las Palmas, while the ships are supposed to sail there and meet them.
Sounds risky. Does anyone object?
Oh, yes. Cabeza de Vaca was strongly against it. He pointed out, look, we don't have a safe port for the ships, the horses are weak, we've no interpreters we can trust, supplies are low.
Makes sense.
The expedition's notary also had serious doubts, cutting off their only escape route. But Narvaez, he seems fixated.
Fixated on what?
On Appalachia. Some of the Indians they captured described this province, Appalachia, as being really rich, and Narvaez just locked onto that idea.
So he pushes inland, and Florida.
It's tough going.
Brutal. They're eating palm hearts just to survive. They cross a river, maybe the Withlacoochee, clash with Indians, capture some guides.
And the tension between Narvaez and Cabeza de Vaca is growing.
Definitely. Cabeza de Vaca even leads a group back to the coast, trying desperately to find the ships or any decent harbor. Nothing. They're lost, basically, chasing rumors about Appalachia.
This Appalachia, it sounds like a big deal in Florida at the time. It was. The largest, most organized chiefdom around there. Not like the small villages they'd seen so far. They grew a lot of maize, had agriculture.
Some more complex society.
Yeah, hierarchical.
Like
main chief, lesser chiefs. Their capital, Anhaica, was a real center. It connects them to what historians call the Mississippian culture. These big agricultural societies across the southeast, building mounds, complex stuff. Appalachia was part of that world.
But Narvaez is still thinking gold and riches. He ignores looking for the Rio de las Palmas.
Seems like it. He's just laser focused on getting to Appalachia. But the journey is hellish. When they finally get there, it's a letdown. Not the golden province they dreamed of.
What did they find?
Villages, maize fields, but not the kind of wealth they expected.
Yeah.
And the Appalachia chief, he plays it smart.
How so?
Downplays how much food and stuff they have. Probably wants the Spanish gone. And he points them towards the coast, to a village called Ote. Says they have food? Very. Audi was likely outside his control, maybe even enemies. Clever move to get rid of the Spanish. Shows the Indians weren't just passive victims, they were maneuvering too.
So, the march to Audi, another disaster.
Complete disaster. Swamps, ambushes by Appalachia warriors. The Spanish started out confident, horses, guns.
The usual advantages.
Right. But those advantages start to fade. Florida's terrain is tough, the resistance is different, supplies are running out, they're becoming vulnerable.
And then they make a drastic decision about the horses.
Yeah. They reach a bay, which they actually name the Bay of Horses, and they decide they have to kill and eat their horses.
Wow, that's desperate. Giving up their main military asset.
Total desperation. But it also shows kind of their resourcefulness, maybe, because then they face this impossible task. How do we get out of here?
By sea. But they have no ships.
Exactly. So they decide to build rafts with whatever they can find. There's a Portuguese carpenter who seems to take charge. They're cutting down trees using palmetto fibers for rigging, melting down crossbows and stirrups for nails.
Incredible ingenuity under pressure.
Amazing, isn't it? And they need water for the sea journey. So they skin the horses' legs, tan the hides, and sew them into water bags. They also raid nearby villages for maize.
Weeks of this.
Weeks of brutal work. And finally, they launch these 5 rafts. 50 men crammed onto each one, barely floating. It's a horrifying image.
And the raft journey is just more hardship.
Relentless. They hug the coast. Sometimes Indians offer food, then attack them later. A storm hits. A norther leaves them freezing, stranded. They have to burn captured canoes just to stay warm.
It's just one thing after another.
Always. They get desperate for fresh water, try to trade with some Indians for it. Ends badly. Two men, Dorado Teodoro and an enslaved African, go with the Indians to get water and just disappear. Never seen again.
More losses. More attacks.
Constant struggle. Hostile encounters, starvation, thirst. Just trying to survive day to day on these flimsy rafts in the open Gulf.
And then they hit a major obstacle, a big river.
Yeah, a huge river, probably the Mississippi. The current is incredibly strong. It scatters the rafts. They lose sight of each other.
Chaos. What happens to Cabeza de Vaca's group?
His raft, and another one with Dorantes and Castillo, eventually get washed ashore. Somewhere on an island off the Texas coast. But even landing is disastrous. A huge wave hits, throws the men into the surf, drowns several more. The raft is smashed.
Just when they think they've reached land.
It's the start of a whole new nightmare, really. The survivors from the two rafts eventually find each other on this island, Malhado, the island of misfortune.
And the local Indians? The Kapokes and Hans?
Initially, there's some interaction, maybe like guests. But it goes downhill fast. The Spaniards, they don't have any useful skills for that environment. They can't hunt, fish, or gather food like the Indians can.
So they become a burden.
Exactly. And it turns into enslavement. They're forced to do the hardest, most degrading work. Stuff usually done by women digging for roots in the marshes, hauling firewood, water.
What a fall from grace. Conquistadors to slaves.
And that winter, 1528-29, is horrific. So cold, so little food. Out of maybe 80 men who landed on that island, only about 15 survived the winter. Most just starve or freeze.
80 down to 15. That's catastrophic.
There's even this grim story about another small group of Spaniards stranded nearby resorting to cannibalism. Just shows the absolute desperation.
Hard to fathom. And for Cabeza de Vaca, the nobleman.
Imagine it. Digging for roots till your hands bleed raw, being ordered around, maybe beaten. It must have been psychologically devastating.
And Estebanico, he was already enslaved.
Yeah, his situation is complex. His master, Dorantes, is also enslaved now by the Indians. So the power dynamics shift completely. Maybe Estebanico's prior experience gave him some resilience. Hard to say, but the Indians are totally in charge now.
But they start to adapt, learn survival skills.
They have to. They learn to dig the right roots and endure the conditions. And eventually, after years of this, Dorantes and Castillo managed to get away from Malhado. They used some trade items they somehow acquired.
Years? How long were they enslaved?
Different groups for different amounts of time, but yeah, we're talking years of captivity. Cabeza de Vaca himself was separated for a while, living more as a trader between groups before he could escape.
And they eventually find each other again.
Yes. Cabeza de Vaca, Dorantes, Castillo, and Estebanico.
Woo.
The four main figures, they finally reunite inland at a place they called the River of Nuts because of the pecan trees. That's a huge moment.
The four survivors, what do they do now?
They start traveling west, generally, moving from one indigenous group to another. They see buffalo hunts, observe different customs. They learn about the Mariamans, who were apparently really harsh towards women.
Still rough living, though.
Oh, yeah. At one point, they're basically used as mosquito shields.
Yeah?
Forced to stand by the fires so the smoke keeps the bugs off the Indians.
Seriously, human fly swatters.
Seems like it. But then something changes. Something extraordinary.
The healing.
The healing. They start being seen as medicine men. It's fascinating how this happens. It probably taps into beliefs on both sides. The Spaniards' ideas about miracles, maybe the devil, and the Indians' own spiritual worldviews and healing practices.
Were there already healers or shamans among the Indians?
Oh, absolutely. And there were stories like the one about Malacosa, this strange, frightening figure who would supposedly appear, wound people, and then heal them. The Spaniards hear this and try to fit it into their Christian ideas, saying their prayers could ward him off.
So they're sort of blending beliefs, or being interpreted through existing beliefs.
Kind of. The Indians ask them to heal the sick. At first they're reluctant, saying they don't know how, but they're pressured into it. They make the sign of the cross, recite prayers, and sometimes people get better.
Placebo effect. Coincidence. Divine intervention.
Who knows? But from the Indians' perspective, these strangers had power. Their reputation starts to grow. They become revered figures.
From slaves to sacred healers. What a transformation.
It's incredible. And as they travel west, huge crowds start following them. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of people trailing them from village to village, bringing their sick, offering gifts.
That must have been overwhelming.
Totally. They cross a big river, the Rio Grande Sea Mountains. They're moving southwestward now, trying to manage this enormous following.
Are they still trying to get back to Spanish territory?
That's the ultimate goal, but it's complicated now. They find women carrying maize flour, sign of agriculture, settled villages further west. That's encouraging.
A sign of civilization in their eyes, maybe?
Perhaps. Then they meet traders carrying a copper bell, maybe from way down in Mexico, from Paquime and cotton blankets. It shows these huge trade networks existed long before Europeans arrived.
Connecting distant peoples.
Right. The castaways want to go west, towards where the maize comes from, but the Indians with them are scared of the groups living that way. There's this weird incident where people get sick and die, and everyone thinks it's because the healers are angry they aren't being obeyed.
Their perceived power is immense now.
Absolutely. They eventually reach La Junta de los Rios, where the Conchos River meets the Rio Grande. It's an oasis, people farming beans, squash, maize. Decades later, another Spanish group came through, and the people there remembered the 4 healers passing through.
Wow. Left a lasting impression.
Definitely. They decide to follow the trail of maize up the Rio Conchos. The Indians are friendly, sharing food. It seems like they're finally getting closer.
But something changes the mood.
Drastically. They start seeing signs.
Yeah.
Signs of other Spaniards, but not friendly signs. Burned villages, people fleeing in terror, reports of men on horseback capturing people.
Slavers.
Spanish slavers operating illegally, raiding deep into the interior. It's horrifying for Cabeza de Vaca and the others. And their Indian followers are terrified, confused. How can these violent men be the same people as the healers?
What a clash of realities.
Cabeza de Vaca is determined to find these Spaniards. He eventually spots horsemen, goes out to meet them.
Must have been a tense moment.
Incredibly awkward. It's a slaving party, led by Diego de Alcaraz. And Alcaraz's first reaction isn't relief, it's annoyance. He wants to enslave the Indians who are with Cabeza de Vaca.
He doesn't recognize him.
Not at first. He sees this figure, ragged, looking more Indian than European after nearly 8 years. And then Cabeza de Vaca has to explain, we are Spanish too.
Mind-blowing for Alcaraz, surely.
Completely. And then Estebanico gets sent back to fetch Dorantes and Castillo. Notice how quickly the old hierarchy snaps back. Estebanico, the revered healer alongside the others, is suddenly just the slave sent on an errand again.
Yeah, it's telling.
But the most powerful moment maybe is a reaction to the Indians who traveled with him.
What do they say?
They refuse to believe the healers and the slavers are the same people. They tell Alcaraz, look, these men came to us naked, barefoot. They healed us. They shared everything. They took nothing. You guys come on horses with weapons. You steal, you kill, you enslave. You can't be the same kind of people.
That's incredibly powerful, a devastating critique.
It really is. It cuts right to the core of the hypocrisy and brutality.
So they finally connect with the Spanish authorities.
Eventually. They make their way, with difficulty, to Culiacan. The mayor there, Melchor Diaz, is apparently genuinely moved by their story, by what they've endured.
A bit of humanity at last.
A bit. But getting back into the Spanish world is weird for them. They get to Compostela, they're given European clothes. It feels strange after so long.
Culture shock in reverse.
Totally. And they're really disturbed by all the slaving they see. They try to complain to the regional governor, Núñez de Guzman, who was notorious for his cruelty, by the way, but nothing comes of it.
Unsurprising, maybe.
Probably. Finally, they make it all the way to Mexico City. Their story has traveled ahead of them. They're welcomed like heroes, or at least incredible curiosities.
What an end to the journey. Or the end of that part of it.
Exactly. So, wrapping up this deep dive. What a story, right? Cabeza de Vaca, Castillo, Dorantes, Estebanico. From conquistadors aiming for glory to shipwreck victims to slaves, and then somehow, against all odds, becoming these revered healers.
It completely flips the script on the usual conquest narrative. It gives you this intimate, complex, often brutal look at those very first contacts.
Absolutely essential perspective. It challenges those easy, self-serving stories the conquerors often told.
And what happened to them after they got back?
Their paths split. Cabeza de Vaca, he still had ambitions, tried to get another governorship in South America, but it ended badly for him, more disappointment. Dorantes and Castillo, they seem to have settled back into colonial life reasonably well.
At Estebanico.
Estebanico's end is tragic. He later went north again, guiding another expedition looking for wealthy cities. And he was killed by Zuni Indians.
Wow, after surviving so much.
Yeah. So maybe the final thought to leave you with.
Yeah.
Think about those 8 years. The suffering, the enslavement, but also the healing, the deep connections they must have formed with indigenous people who saved them, followed them, revered them.
How could that not change someone?
Exactly. Did it change how at least one of them viewed colonization? Viewed the indigenous people? We can't know for sure, but the story forces you to ask. And what does this incredible account teach us even today about understanding different cultures, about power, about survival, about shared humanity?
A lot to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.